the Reggio Emilia approach to education talks about 3 educators in the classroom. They're all there at one time: the teacher, the child, and the environment. Typically, we don't think about the environment as an educator, someone that's alive like a person is. And while the environment is created by adults, the relationship that children have with the environment and how we arrange it and what we provide in it is important to their success in school. If we start to think about that environment as an educator, as in the Reggio Emilia approach does, we can begin to spend more time noticing how our surroundings can really take on a life of their own and contribute to children's learning and even to our teaching. We need to use all the resources that we have to support what we do, and the environment is one of the greatest resources for teachers. When we think about the environment, we tend to think about the physical setting and what we actually see around us. However, looking at it from a child's perspective, there's a lot in terms of the emotional environment that kids take in terms of their experiences in the classroom. Kids are looking at the environment from a really different perspective than we are. Obviously, they're at a lower level, and so how they see things is quite different than how we see things. And how they view the space and what they can possibly do with the space often isn't how adults intend them to use it. So when we see kids engaging in rough and tumble play that we didn't necessarily expect, or we see them moving items from one area to another, part of that is that they really see the space in a different way. And if we allow that space to be more organic and reflective and responsive to children's needs, it's more likely to become one of children's favorite places. And those spaces that can really support children's autonomy as well as their social interaction, their creative exploration or expression, are kind of places that children can really hold on to, remember, and use in really, really powerful ways. So as a teacher, we need to really think about the environment as a third teacher and put some attention on that, and really focus on how children interact in space and how that reflects their understanding of the world and helps them to accomplish goals and helps us as teachers to accomplish goals. One really important consideration in planning for the environment is the schedule. And we're going to focus on the schedule and transitions this week. So since children thrive in an environment that provides some consistency, it's important that in even environments for the youngest children that there be some predictable routines within our space. And there are certain factors that we really need to consider in planning our schedule. Oftentimes these are constraints placed on us externally, but sometimes there are our own values that place constraint on the schedule and how we divide the time up in the day. So what we want to think about is that schedules should have large blocks of time. When children have larger blocks of time, they're more likely to delve deeper into their learning and their play, and it'll help them develop an increased attention span because they're going to spend more time in activities. If children know that they really can't invest in something because they're going to be asked to move on, why pay attention to that? What happens is that children really don't spend as much time focusing on something if they know that there's very little value placed on their active engagement. It's more about creating a product. The environment should provide a balance between child-initiated and adult-initiated activities. You need to think about really what do children have a choice in the day to participate in or not participate in, and what do the adults control in terms of what happens. It doesn't mean that they're directing those interactions or those experiences, but that the adult determines what's going to happen during that period of time. Also providing a balance of groupings, individual, small group, and large group activities. What tends to happen is that play happens in an individual or small group environment, and most learning occurs in large group. But when you think about, from your perspective, sitting in a large lecture class, there's not a whole lot of interaction in that learning, and oftentimes it's really hard to focus and pay attention. The smaller the group, the more intimate the setting, the more personalized the instruction, the greater the learning. And so I'd advocate that we do as much as possible in small group or even in individual situations. And we do want to promote some group cohesion, but a lot of times developmentally, children are not ready to wait that long for learning to happen and for engagement to happen. And so they're often more distracted. And distracted not as in that that's a fault of the child. Distracted means that there's something that children are more interested in that is more distracting or more attention seeking than the adult. And so if we want children to pay attention, we have to be the thing that provides the greatest amount of engagement for them. So children are naturally distracted when we're not that interesting. And we need to start reflecting on that rather than blaming kids for not having certain attention skills. Now I'd like to focus on one strategy in terms of the learning context that we create for children that we're going to utilize this semester. Implementing small group instruction is a strategy that is so underutilized in educational contexts. It's really problematic because it's one of the best ways to support children's learning and our teaching and engagement with content. And unfortunately, we just tend to think that we need to deliver information to children in a large group. Whenever we're sitting in a large group, we know that a large percentage of kids are not going to be paying attention. And therefore, we're going to have to reteach that information to children, or they're just not going to get it. So when thinking about small group instruction, there's certain strategies we need to consider. Keep your group size small. Try to limit it to 6 or under. It's important to do that so that you can really pay attention to children and really ask them individual questions and see what each of them knows. As much as possible, intentionally organize your groups. Configure them based on who the children are, on what concepts you are focusing on, what children's needs are, their strengths are, their learning styles. There's so many different ways to group children. Really focusing on teaching content is a good strategy to consider in small group instruction. Teaching something new to kids in large group means that many of them are going to miss it or not understand it, and you're not going to be able to assess where kids are in the moment and know if you've been effective in teaching them. So when you're introducing new content, oftentimes it means that you're going to do it multiple times with small groups of children, but this is still one really important strategy to utilize, and that we're going to focus on that this semester because you're going to be teaching math and science content to children, and it's important that this occur in small groups so that you can evaluate how well you're teaching and also consider what the children know and understand. In small groups, you can take a more active role in children's learning. In large group, teachers can direct learning a whole heck of a lot more, but that's not the goal of teaching and learning, and that's not a constructivist approach. So what we want to do is think about how children can really be actively engaged in modeling and working with kids, and small groups definitely allow for that. But what we need to do is build it into our daily schedule. There's many opportunities in a day when children are choosing free play activities and engaged in learning centers where there's small group things happening or they're working in small groups. But those are not necessarily intentionally planned by the teacher. What you want to do is think about building in opportunities every day for every kid to have an experience with you in the classroom where they can definitely interact with the teacher. It may mean at times that you're going to have to think about where the other children are and what's happening and what they're engaged with and planning for them as well, and ensuring that either they're working individually or in other groups, that something productive is happening, but that there's this opportunity every day that you've built into your plans to work with individual children. So let's think for a second about the benefits of small group instruction. There's a reason that we're utilizing it this semester. And first off, it supports child engagement the most of any teaching strategy. When you're working with small groups of children, they can see you, they're on the same level as you, they're right next to you, and you can provide them with these really engaging and exciting learning opportunities. It gives them quality time with you, which is important. It means that you're developing relationships with them, understanding each other better, able to interact on a more personal and intimate level that's going to support learning. And then, yes, because of those interactions, kids are going to understand the content better. Their learning is going to be more effective, and your teaching is going to be more effective. And that's what the goal of education is. So often we do things in large groups and we spend so much time policing children or having multiple groups happening where we're just overseeing. Instead, this is about deep involvement with their learning. It can also promote individualization. You can, as you're working in small groups, you're going to see who understands something and who doesn't. You can prompt children to challenge them more, to ask them harder questions and try to get more information out of them, and really for them to think critically and to construct knowledge and understanding
There's so many opportunities to assess them in the moment in authentic ways that you can continue to build curriculum and learning as you're assessing children's experiences and understanding. And that linking of assessment and content delivery is so important, and it makes the opportunities for flexibility in your instruction to happen and to be a really positive experience. The last focus point in terms of the benefits is that it promotes language development. The article you're reading this week by Dangle and Durden really talks about how teachers, when they're engaged with children in small groups, need to facilitate language. And this is what we're going to be focusing on this semester. You will be documenting how you engage with children, the types of questions you ask children, the vocabulary that you introduce to children, how they engage with content and concepts and use their language when talking with you about their ideas. And we're going to be focusing on that this semester, that integration and use of language and teaching of language while implementing science and math activities. So it's a really exciting journey we have this semester, and I hope you read that article really carefully and really pay attention to how to utilize small group instruction. I'm going to push you and challenge you to advocate for kids and for what we know is best for kids in introducing activities and new concept learning in small group context. And I hope you really enjoy that opportunity, but also take that challenge and find it really, really invigorating and exciting for you.